With the 2021 NBA Draft Lottery happening tomorrow, that means that this is the final day that you can use the 2021 end of season lottery order for your mock draft. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I've said it many times before, but this has been a very fun class for me to cover, as there were many talented players in this class to the point where sometimes I feel like players should be ranked higher, but it's just not how it works because the talent in this class is so immense. So I'm excited for that. Again, this is all based off my own opinion, based off what I've watched, so keep that in mind when you're watching this video. But before we do get into the mock draft, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, do all those things, be a big help to me. Let's get 100 likes on this video. Let's see if YouTube will recommend it to others. But with that being said, let's get right into the video. My first overall pick in the 2021 NBA Draft by the Houston Rockets is obviously Cade Cunningham. This is going to be the #1 pick for me, no matter what team gets the first pick, and it's probably going to be the first overall pick regardless of what team gets the first overall pick in the real world anyways. You know, he's just a special talent. There's no other way around it. I've talked ad nauseum about him, and everything I said I truly believe. He checks off all the boxes with his physical tools as far as height, weight, wingspan. He checks off all the skills that you need. He can pass, he can score, he has good defensive IQ. He checks off all the intangibles that you look for as well. You know, the passing kind of feel for the game, the leadership qualities, the ability to know when to take over a game when he needs to. Those are all things you look for in a franchise player. It should be no one else but Cade Cunningham at the first overall pick at this point. I think some people are starting to overthink this. That moves me to the second overall pick, Evan Mobley, who is still in a slight 2 behind Cade. I think Jalen Green's a bit closer to Mobley than I probably would have had him like a month or two ago, the more I watched Jalen Green, who we'll talk about soon. But Mobley obviously is a special talent in his own right. In Detroit, it's a BPA situation. I wouldn't be against them taking Jalen Green because Jalen Green would be a great fit for that team. But Mobley is just, he's enough of a better prospect than Green for me to say just BPA him. I know they have Isaiah Stewart, but Mobley is more than skilled enough to play power forward, which he probably will have to play early on in his career just because of the weight, and I think he's skilled enough to as well. He doesn't just move well for a big. Like, if he was considered a wing, he would be considered a very good mover for a wing. His fluidity is on the levels of guys that I don't even want to compare him to because I just think it's unfair to set that kind of expectation on him. But he's a very special athlete for a 7-footer and does things skill-wise that you only used to seeing like small forwards and some power forwards like a few years ago. He's really the definition of a new age big, and probably the best big man prospect I've seen since Karl-Anthony Towns or Anthony Davis. That moves me to the third overall pick, which is the Orlando Magic. They take Jalen Green, best player available, my #3 player in this draft. My 1, 2, and 3 players go 1, 2, 3 in this draft. Orlando's not in a situation to be picky. I know they have guards. They drafted Cole Anthony, who started to show a lot of signs when he was healthy throughout the year. They have Markelle Fultz, who went healthy, starting to turn it around, but keyword with both of those guys is health. They traded for RJ Hampton, who looks pretty good, and honestly, I think it's another reason you probably should draft Jalen Green, because he has a very good friendship with RJ Hampton. They've been friends for a while. I know they were part of that same sort of friend group back in high school. But with Jalen Green, he's the third best player in this draft. I've had him lower. I had him around like that 5 to 6 range, but the more I watched him, like the more I just couldn't deny him. He's a great athlete. You know, everyone talks about the vertical explosion that he has, but his greatest athletic gift, in my opinion, is his flexibility. You know, the ability to contort your body around the basket while having that hang time and finish at angles that just don't seem possible. He showed a lot of good signs as a shooter in the G League. He wasn't a bad shooter in college, but he was definitely, not college, high school, but he definitely was more of a shot maker than a shooter. He still definitely is more of a shot maker than a shooter, but he took, you know, a decent amount of threes, made a decent amount of threes, had a decent percentage, and was taking some difficult attempts as well. There was just a lot to like. He's a very complete scoring guard prospect, in my opinion, that shows a lot of potential as an athlete and a shot creator. And for Orlando, they needed a player like this. They've been looking for a player like this for a while, and I think that they can get that with Jalen Green. With the 4th pick, I have the OKC Thunder selecting Jalen Suggs. I debated having Jonathan Kuminga going here. I'm higher on Jonathan Kuminga than probably all of my friends, I'll be quite honest with you. We'll talk about him in a minute, but I ended up going with Suggs just because the fit with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is great, because traditionally speaking, based off like the base skill set that they have, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is clearly the 2 guard, and Jalen Suggs would clearly be the point guard. But given like the other skills that they have, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would be the primary on-ball creator, and Jalen Suggs would be the off-ball creator. Jalen Suggs does not have a great handle right now, at least not good enough to create separation consistently. You know, there are questions about his scoring ability. He does have a tendency to heat up a bit, you know, when he needs to. He can have the clutch factor, things like that. But I do think there are more questions about his shooting ability than people probably want to say he does. It's not overly a problem, but I definitely think it's something to look at. You know, I think that going to OKC, where he can play off of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, will be a great situation for him. And I think both Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Suggs would benefit, because you get defense with Jalen Suggs, you get the passing, and you get someone that's unselfish and will let Shai Gilgeous-Alexander be the guy, and will also being someone that can have a great impact on the game, and not just being like an off-ball secondary player. He can just have a great impact in that role, and maybe even be a bit more than that. But it's definitely a good thing that he will be playing with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and won't be forced into a primary role. Very similar to like how Halliburton ended up with De'Aaron Fox. You know, going to a team that has a good on-ball creator will be key for guys like Suggs, or at the time Halliburton, where they have these very unique skill sets where they're great passing playmakers, but they don't really create a lot of separation with their dribbles and stuff like that. Which leads me to the 5th overall pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm taking Jonathan Kuminga. You might be saying, they just drafted Isaac Okoro 5th overall the year prior. Why would you take Kuminga here? For me, Kuminga is more of a power forward than a small forward. Isaac Okoro is only 6'5", 6'6" maybe. So he definitely profiles more as a full-time 3, and maybe if he improves his shooting, he can move to the 2 as well. The reason why I like Kuminga in Cleveland is, you might be saying, it's not a great situation. Yeah, it's not. The organization isn't great. I would have loved to have him go to OKC or Golden State. But for me, he can play power forward, and he's going to be in a situation where he's not going to be forced to be an on-ball creator. He's going to have Colin Sexton, who's going to create on-ball. He's going to have Darius Garland, who's going to create on-ball. And he can, improve and maybe learn how to play in an off-ball way. It's a risk, definitely, just given the fact that he is one of the more risky prospects in this draft. I've definitely cooled off on him a bit. At one point, he was my number 3 prospect in this draft. Actually, I think at one point, he was my number 2 prospect in this draft. But the more I watched him in the G League, I had to drop him a bit. I think he's around that 8 to 9 range now. And for me personally, I still believe in him. I believe in him more than a lot of my friends do. I still think the talent's there. He's so young. He's so talented. But he needs to learn, because he's not going to have the ball in his hands all the time. He's had the ball in his hands a lot throughout his career. But I still think that's the role he's going to be playing a lot in the NBA. I think he's going to have to learn how to play off-ball the same way that Jaylen Brown kind of has, where, at the start, they were very much an off-ball player, but over time, they grow their on-ball skills. I think Kuminga, that's the hope for him. And I think Cleveland is an underrated scenario, because again, he's going to be in a situation where he's forced to play off ball due to the very talented backcourt of Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, which leads me to the 6th overall pick, the Golden State Warriors via Minnesota, obviously because of the Andrew Wiggins, D'Angelo Russell trade. I have them taking Moses Moody, the shooting guard out of Arkansas. I'd be saying they have Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson has suffered multiple career-altering injuries within the span of 2 years. He's not getting any younger, and it might be time to find a replacement for him. Moses Moody is a very good two-way player, someone that has shown a lot of defensive potential. He can shoot the 3 ball. and he has more on-ball creating potential than I think he gets credit for. And I think Golden State's a great spot. You get a short-term a guy at worst can be the backup to Klay Thompson and play real minutes off the bench and maybe average like double digits off the bench and be a primary guy off the bench for the team. And at his best, I think he could be a long-term replacement for Klay Thompson as well. I'm not saying he is Klay Thompson, he's his own player, but I definitely think getting a guy like Moses Moody who can somewhat create his own shot but can definitely move off ball, he knows how to relocate well, things like that. I think it's a very good thing for Golden State to get with their 6th overall pick, getting a safe player with more potential than I think he gets credit for. With the 7th overall pick, I have the Toronto Raptors selecting Jaden Springer, the shooting guard point guard hybrid out of Tennessee. He's somebody that I'm higher on than most, obviously. I know people have Keon Johnson ahead of him. I have Springer ahead of Keon, personally speaking. And I have him as my number 5 prospect in this draft. He's someone that I've had as high as number 3 at one point in this draft. I'm very high on Jaden Springer as a prospect. He's somebody that shows he can pass. He's somebody that shows more scoring potential that I think he might get credit for, even if it's a bit of a work in progress. But he showed a lot of potential, and he showed a lot of signs that I really liked to be a great all-around player on offense and defense at Tennessee. And he has the added bonus factor of being like a year younger than a lot of these one-and-done prospects. Like, the fact that he's a year younger and was close enough to a lot of his draft peers that were probably a year older in the same class that he's in goes to show me, like, where would he be, like, when he's their age? Like, if he was in the 2022 draft, like, where would he be? If he was just good at Tennessee as a freshman, when he should be in high school, what would he have been doing at IMG in high school? And what would he have been doing there? And what if he was in college when he's going to be in the NBA? And what will that look like? It's hard to explain completely, but he has a lot of potential, is basically what I'm trying to say. More potential than given credit for because of his age and because of the skills that he's shown already. I just don't say potential to say potential because he's young. He also has things that back it up as far as passing indicators, scoring indicators, even if it's a completely something that needs to work on in progress. I don't know, I word that weirdly. Or even the fact that he has a very good defensive IQ, very good motor, and he seems to have a very good work ethic as well. But that leads me into the 8th overall pick, the Orlando Magic. This is a swing for defenses kind of pick. You know, I had a very hard time picking who I would have go here, and I ended up going with Zaire Williams, the small forward at Stanford, who's still top 10 on my board. Although I know a lot of people have him going in like the 15 to 20, maybe even the late first round. I think it's ridiculous. I still think the talent is there, and there were a lot of things that just happened to him this year, and I mentioned in my video that I made about him, that just really weren't fair to hold against him. He never was able to really find rhythm because of the injury he suffered. And, you know, when you are new to a team and you suffer an injury, it's hard to get integrated into the offense. You know, when he was able to find some form of consistency, it was when he was able to find rhythm. And when he found rhythm, he looks like one of the best players in the draft. You know, there's still a lot of concerns. The weight's a concern, obviously. They're going to need to work on that. But just taking a high upside small forward that has a lot of potential as a two-way player, you know, that's something I think that you should be willing to take a risk on. And I think the talent is way more important when looking at Zaire Williams than what happened at Stanford, because there were just a lot of unfortunate things that happened to him at Stanford that weren't within his control. And I think it's unfair to hold those things against him. There's still a lot of concerns. There's still valid concerns about his game. But at the end of the day, he's still talented enough to go top 10. I think Orlando, with their second first-round pick, after getting Jalen Green, who's definitely more of a surefire thing, you can take a bit of a swing for defenses with Zaire Williams, who's still a top 10 talent in my eyes. And that leads me to the Sacramento Kings, and they take Keon Johnson, the shooting guard out of Tennessee. Uber athlete. He's up there with Jalen Green for best athlete in this class. You know, he just does things athletically that left me in awe when I was watching him play. You know, he's somebody that shows a lot of defensive potential. He has shown some passing stuff as well. I don't know if they're fully there. You might be saying, why would they draft him? They just drafted Tyrese Halliburton. I think having a 3-guard rotation can work. You know, having a Keon Johnson who is very raw offensively, but I think has shown enough signs that he could grow into a very good offensive player. And they already were running a 3-guard lineup. You know, Buddy Hield was there. You know, they had Halliburton and Fox. I know both of them dealt with injuries, but still, I think getting Keon Johnson in there is very good. He's a great transition athlete, and when you have a primary ball handler like De'Aaron Fox, that means having a great transition athlete that he can run with is going to be dangerous, and Keon Johnson is that. I considered Scotty Barnes here, but I have concerns about his half-court offense in an already pretty shaky situation in Sacramento. And I think Keon Johnson, there are concerns about his half-court offense, but I think that there are less concerns, and there's more potential to him to grow into a very good half-court player, and that's why I have him going 9th overall to the Sacramento Kings. Moving on, we got back-to-back international prospects. In fact, the 2 best international prospects in this draft, in my opinion. The first one being Josh Giddey, who I have going 10th overall to the New Orleans Pelicans. You might be saying, why did he do that? They have Lonzo. Lonzo's inconsistent. I think that there's a chance that he's not going to end up coming back. I would love him to come back. He has a great connection with Zion. I can't believe, how am I forgetting Zion Williamson's name? But he has great connection with him. They have good chemistry. But there's a good chance that Lonzo does end up leaving. Obviously, we heard rumbles from his camp. I don't know how true those rumbles are. But he might just get offered something that is just too hard for the Pelicans to match. And that there's a good chance that he ends up leaving. Get Josh Giddey, who can probably form a good connection with Zion. He's a very creative passer. The lobs between him and Jalen will be great. It allows you to let Lonzo walk. You get somebody that I don't know, maybe will be as good as him off the bat, because Lonzo was actually pretty good this year. But Josh Giddey has the skills to be a very good fit with Zion Williamson. And then maybe you have Kira Lewis at the 2-guard, because Kira Lewis Jr. is a natural 2-guard. It's an interesting fit, I will say that, but Pelicans are just in a BPA situation because, you know, no matter what, they're likely going to draft a player that's going to come off the bench. Because they have, like, almost every position filled. Like, point guard, they have Lonzo, they have Kira Lewis. Actually, this guards in general, it's going to be hard to get minutes if everyone stays. Because of, like, you know, Lonzo, obviously, like I mentioned, Kira Lewis Jr., Nickeil Alexander-Walker, then you get the forwards, Zion and Ingram, have those spots locked up. Although I would consider trading Brandon Ingram to move up in the draft. But that's another story for another time. And then you obviously, the center spot's the one spot, but there's not a center on the board that I think is worth taking at this point. So I just have him taking BPA. Josh Giddey is my number 6 prospect in this draft. I am very high on him. Every time I watch him, I'm just more amazed with the creativity he has as a passer, the feel for the game he has, and just doing all of it while being one of the youngest players in the draft. Which leads me to my favorite pick of this draft, which is the 11th overall pick, held by the Charlotte Hornets. I have them taking USMAN GARURA. This is like my dream scenario, is that USMAN GARURA ends up with the Charlotte Hornets. Why? Because he's a pick and roll player as a roll man that is a very good passer, and the idea of that and LaMelo Ball is so much fun. Imagine a pick and roll between 2 very good passers. Like, that's really good, because LaMelo's already one of the best passers in the league. He's doing things as a passer that I don't see, like, veterans doing that aren't named Chris Paul. In fact, he's doing things that I don't think I've even seen Chris Paul do. And he's, like, what, 18, 19 years old? And then you get USMAN GARURA, who's a very physical, kind of power forward center that you hope can play a Draymond Green role. He's not completely like Draymond Green, because Draymond Green at his best was a very special player. But, you know, he can kind of hopefully play that role. High IQ defensive player with passing tools and a growing offensive game that I think is something to look out for. When he started to get minutes later on in the season for Real Madrid, which is the same team Luka Doncic played for, and he started to get, like, starters minutes, he looked really good and showed some more shooting potential. So I definitely think that the idea of LaMelo and USMAN would be very fun to watch. Which leads me to the 12th pick, which is held by the San Antonio Spurs. I have them taking their second straight Florida State player with a lottery pick in Scottie Barnes. I think Scottie Barnes will go higher than this. It's just the way the board fell this time. You know, it's with Scottie, it's like, what team's going to take a chance on him? I don't know what that team is. I know there's probably going to be a team that takes a chance on him in the top 10. I just don't know what the team is, so I'm not going to try to predict that right now. He is a very versatile player. He can defend multiple positions. He has a great motor. Plays every game like it's Game 7 of Finals. I don't know how much longer Coach Pop's gonna be there. Like, that's something to look out for. I don't know when he's gonna retire, but I think he will look at Scottie Barnes, a player that has great physical tools, a great motor, and a high basketball IQ, and draft him. There are legit concerns about Scottie Barnes' half-court offense. I will admit that. Yeah, it's why he isn't going higher. If he had any resemblance of a jump shot and a half-court offense that made you say he could grow into a good to maybe even great player in both of those aspects, he would go higher. He'd probably be my number 3 prospect in this draft if he could shoot the basketball. But those are legit concerns with him right now. But I think San Antonio's a good landing spot. Like Devin Vassell, I don't know if he'll get a lot of minutes early. He might though, just based off how much effort he brings, you know, and I think Pop would like a player like that. There are international players that are on the board, like Alfred Sengun, that I think the Spurs would consider, but Scottie Barnes is just too much of a tantalizing prospect at this point to pass up on. With the 13th overall pick, I have the Indiana Pacers selecting Cade, who, spoiler alert, tomorrow I will be dropping my prospect profile video of him on. Sorry Mark Sandler, I would have loved to put James Bouknight here, but Cade Jones is just way higher on my board. You know, they're trying to stop Miles Turner. You know, he's been in trade rumors forever now. You know, Domantas Sabonis, you know, he's a good player, but right now he's in a situation where he's the best player on the team, or at least in a role where he is asked to be the best player on the team. He's not that. He's just worth it to be like kind of like a third option as like a 15, 18, 10, and 5 guy, which he kind of is already, but it's not in a correct role. So I don't know what his future with the Pacers is. He's a very good player, one of the more underrated players in the league in my opinion. But it should be interesting to see what happens with him. That's another player to probably make a video about. But with Cade Jones, he's one of the more high upside players. I'm not going to say too much about him because I do want to talk about him in that video I'm dropping about him. But he's high upside. There's a lot of like untapped offensive potential with him. That's just what I'm going to leave it at. I usually wouldn't say this like, oh, he has a lot of potential, that's why you drafted him. But given the front court situation being kind of murky with the two guys, we don't know how long either of them have left in Indiana. I think getting a high upside guy that you can groom to be the next sort of front court player in Indiana is good. You know, again, Bouknight would be an interesting option here. Jalen Johnson, who we'll talk about next, is an interesting option, but Cade Jones is just too tantalizing of a prospect, for me at least, to pass. And I know Indiana fans, specifically Mark Sandler, won't like that, but Mark Sandler, you have bad food takes, so I don't care. But moving on to the 14th overall pick, I have the Golden State Warriors selecting Jalen Johnson, the small forward out of Duke. You know, he's somebody that started the year off very high on my board. Number 3, in fact. He had all-around great tools. He still has a lot of talent. Talent that suggests that I wouldn't be against the idea of him going in the top 10. And there might be a mock draft down the line where he does go in the top 10. There's a chance he goes to the top 10 in real life. There's also a chance he falls out of the lottery. We don't know. We'll always have to see with him. Some team might take a chance on his talent. Some team might not. I think that there are certain games that he played at Duke that showcased his talent, like against Pittsburgh. He showed us why everyone was so high on him. But there are also games that are concerning and showcased his flaws a lot. I still very much am a big fan of Jalen Johnson. He's one of my favorite prospects in this draft. You know, I think it's unfair to criticize him for leaving Duke early when he already was hurt and was getting inconsistent play time. But I also think that there are legit concerns about his jumper, what he can do outside of being a passer, effort on defense, things like that. You know, I do think though that he has potential. And I think that Golden State, considering they got a more surefire thing, it's like Orlando. You get the surefire thing with your first round pick, which is a lot higher, and then you get a guy that you can kind of swing through the fences with your second first round pick. And Jalen Johnson is the guy you can kind of swing through, and he might be an immediate impact player right away. It wouldn't shock me if he's one of those guys that ends up being a better NBA player right at the gate than he was in college. Like, he definitely has like indicators that suggest he could be that. But at the same time, he does fall on a poor team because there are legit concerns about that jumper. But he's a great passer, and I think playing alongside Draymond Green would help him out immensely. But that's the end of this video. If you've made it to this point, thank you so much. Again, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, do all those things to be a big help to me. In fact, actually, I really appreciate if you've made it to this point, because this is a super long video, and if you've made it to like the 25-minute mark, I definitely appreciate you. But again, let me know down in the comment section below. What do you think about this draft? Obviously, every team wants to land the first overall pick, so I'm not going to ask, where do you want your team to land in the lottery? Because that's a stupid question. But let me know, like, who do you want your team to draft based off where you think your team's going to land in the lottery? We'd love to hear that stuff in the comment section below. But if you have more time, go watch another video. I have over 390 videos on this channel, all talking about basketball, NBA draft, high school basketball, NBA basketball. Like, you know, if you enjoy basketball, I would really appreciate if you had time, go check out another video. I promise it won't disappoint. But yeah, have a nice day.